The night shift was never easy, but for Rick Moreno and Carter Jennings, it had become a routine. The towering 54-story skyscraper in downtown Miami, a shimmering beacon of steel and glass, felt empty after midnight. The corporate elite, lawyers, and high-powered executives had long since gone home, leaving behind dimly lit offices and the quiet hum of the city outside. Rick, the older of the two security guards, leaned back in his chair, sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee as he gazed at the bank of security monitors. "Another Saturday night in paradise," he muttered, half smiling. Carter, younger and more energetic, was bouncing his leg nervously. He always felt uneasy on Saturdays, though he could never quite explain why. "Yeah, paradise," he echoed, his eyes darting toward the elevator feeds. It wasn't just any Saturday night. Midnight was approaching, and both men felt it, the odd sense of anticipation, the tingling in the air, a change in the very atmosphere of the building. They both had experienced things in the past few months they couldn't explain, but neither dared to speak about it, at least not directly. Rick glanced at the clock. 11:58 p.m. "All right," he said, sitting up and cracking his knuckles. "Let's do the rounds." The two men rose from their chairs, slipping on their jackets as they made their way to the main elevator bank. The building had 4 elevators, but only one of them, number 4, seemed to cause trouble. It was an older model, with brass buttons that clicked audibly when pressed, and a mechanical hum that seemed slightly out of place among the building's modern design. At midnight, it always started with a ding. They stepped into the lobby, and just as expected, the sound echoed through the hall. Ding! Carter stopped in his tracks, swallowing hard. "You hear that?" Rick nodded. "It's starting." The elevator doors slid open slowly, revealing the empty interior, lit by the soft glow of the fluorescent light inside. The elevator shouldn't have been running. It was programmed to stay idle after 11 p.m. when no one was in the building. Rick motioned for Carter to follow, and the two stepped inside. The doors closed behind them with a soft whoosh. There was no need to press any buttons. As always, the elevator seemed to have a mind of its own. With a gentle lurch, the elevator began to ascend. Neither man spoke, but both felt the unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. The walls seemed to shimmer slightly, and the familiar sound of the building's ventilation system was replaced by an eerie silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of the elevator motor. Suddenly, the floor indicator above the doors stopped at 20, but they weren't stopping. The sensation of weightlessness hit them first. The elevator shot upward faster than it should have, far faster than normal. Rick clenched his jaw, steadying himself against the wall as his stomach churned. Carter's hand darted to the brass railing along the side, his knuckles white. Then, with a sickening jolt, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered, casting strange, distorted shadows on the walls. A tense silence filled the space, broken only by the soft ping of the elevator arriving at its destination. The doors slid open, revealing the past. They were no longer in a modern skyscraper. The lobby before them was bathed in sepia tones, like an old photograph. Rick and Carter stepped out cautiously, the air thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and perfume. Men in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses strolled by, oblivious to the two security guards dressed in their modern uniforms. "Where the hell are we?" Carter whispered, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. He glanced at the brass-plated sign on the wall. "The Majestic Hotel, Miami, 1927. Rick's heart raced. He had heard stories, rumors among the older security staff, about strange happenings in the building, but this was something else. "I don't know, but we need to be careful. Let's not draw attention." They tried to stay inconspicuous, but the anachronism of their uniforms stood out. A bellhop passed them, giving a curious glance, but saying nothing. The world around them felt real, solid, and alive. A jazz band played softly from a lounge nearby, and the low hum of conversation filled the air. Suddenly, a man in a pinstripe suit approached them. He looked as though he belonged there, but his eyes, dark, knowing, seemed out of place. He tipped his fedora slightly. You don't belong here, gentlemen, the man said, his voice dripping with certainty. Carter stammered, We don't know how. You took the wrong elevator, the man interrupted. His gaze was piercing. But you knew that, didn't you? Before Rick could respond, the world seemed to ripple around them. The sepia tones drained away, and the smell of smoke and perfume vanished. The man's face flickered, as though caught between two realities. Get back in the elevator. Now, the man said, his voice echoing strangely. Before it's too late. Without hesitation, Rick and Carter turned and rushed back to the elevator, slamming the door close button as soon as they were inside. The doors shut, and the elevator began to move again, this time, descending rapidly. The sensation of freefall was terrifying, but it didn't last long. With another stomach-churning jolt, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered again, and when the doors opened, they were no longer in the 1920s. They stepped out into a world of silence and shadows. The skyscraper was there, but it was hollow, derelict. Windows were shattered, desks overturned, papers scattered like leaves in an abandoned wind. The air was cold, unnaturally so, and a faint fog clung to the ground. This can't be real, Carter whispered. It's like a ghost town. Rick's voice was grim. Maybe it is. The night sky outside was different too, no stars, just an oppressive, swirling darkness. They cautiously moved through the desolate hallways, every sound amplified by the emptiness around them. They reached the windows, looking out onto a city that no longer resembled Miami. It was vast, sprawling, but wrong. The skyline was jagged, alien, the buildings twisted at unnatural angles. And far in the distance, strange lights pulsed, flickering like distant fires. Is this the future? Carter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rick didn't answer. He wasn't sure if it was the future, another dimension, or some nightmarish version of reality. All he knew was that they had to leave, and fast. The elevator dinged again behind them, the sound sharp in the cold air. The two men turned, moving quickly back to the only familiar thing in this strange place. But as they approached, they saw something standing in front of the open doors. It was humanoid, but wrong in every way. Its skin was pale, translucent, and stretched taut over bones that jutted at odd angles. Its eyes were sunken, hollow, and it moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. A rasping sound came from its throat as it turned its head toward them, sniffing the air. Rick froze. Carter grabbed his arm. We have to go. Now. The creature's head snapped in their direction, its mouth opening in a silent scream. Without thinking, they sprinted toward the elevator, diving inside just as the doors began to close. The thing slammed into the doors with a sickening thud, its bony fingers scraping against the metal as the elevator descended. Both men were gasping for breath, hearts pounding in their chests. The descent felt endless, the lights flickering in and out as the elevator made its way down. Finally, with a soft ping, it came to a halt. The doors opened to reveal the familiar lobby of their skyscraper. The modern design, the clean floors, the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights, it was all back to normal. It was over. Or at least, it seemed like it. Carter slumped against the wall, his breath ragged. What the hell just happened? Rick shook his head, staring at the elevator doors as they slowly closed. I don't know. But this thing, this building, it's a gateway. To other places. Other times. Carter looked at him, fear in his eyes. Do you think it's over? Rick didn't answer right away. He glanced at the clock on the wall, 3:57 a.m. They had 3 minutes before the window closed, before whatever strange power controlled the elevator would go dormant again, waiting for the next Saturday night. He turned to Carter. For now. But next week, who knows? The two men exchanged a silent understanding. There would be no escaping the elevator's pull, no way to avoid the strange encounters it brought. They were bound to the skyscraper, tied to the midnight elevator, and the horrors and wonders that lay within. As the clock struck 4 a.m., the building settled into its usual quiet. But both men knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again.